All right. I have a wireless network available. Hi, everybody. Welcome to LayerOne Post Lunch. This talk will be about juice jacking. It's a basic concept about what the term is, juice jacking. My name is Robert Rowley. My Twitter handle is IamLay. So you can go ahead and harass me on Twitter, do whatever the hell you want. And I'll go ahead and get right into it. What is juice jacking? Has anybody heard this term before? All right, who wants to yell out what it is? Come on. All right, juice jacking is the what?
Subverting a charging station.
Subverting a charging station. Yeah, it's a malicious cell phone charging station. But really, to me, it was one great drunk epiphany. It was an epiphany I had with some friends, Riverside, who is a local here. He's going to be here later, but he's not here right now, unfortunately. We were all out drinking and basically at a party, and the guy said, wait a second, why would anybody trust their cell phone to charge in somebody else's laptop, or let alone freaking wireless network available? I can't turn it off. Oh well. But it was basically like, why would somebody trust this? What's going on? And why don't we make one of these cell phone charging stations do some nasty ass shit? So the party was on July 4th. The plan was that for the following August, which was just about a month away during DEF CON, we would build a malicious charging kiosk, and we would put it out at DEF CON in the most malicious environment we could find, the most paranoid individuals we could find, and all through the build, it was a push to try to make a secure system that wasn't going to get hacked itself, and then be able to put it out into the environment, do something nasty that's going to teach people not to freaking plug in their phones to random stuff. And I'll get into that. So the build is simple, though. Our plan was that we'd take an EEPC, one of those small laptops. They're pretty much cheap and, whatever. We'd stick it in a box, and we'd have lots of USB cables sticking out, and people would just plug into it. The software on it would run Linux on a live CD. This was presumed so that in case the system got popped, we could just reboot it to reset it back to original state. Running the USB utils package and some custom shellcode that I wrote that basically monitors for what's going on, what's happening. And as you can see in my next slide here, I identify that I am a hacker because that is me with a hacksaw and an EEPC hacking it in two. That was the first part. First you hack. Second part is then you put it in a box, and this is literally what the original juice jacker looked like. This is the EEPC that I mentioned that is hacked in two and like folded over, so it had a screen facing outward. And the back is the iOmega like CD-ROM drive to run everything off of, and you can see power right there. Somewhere in there is a USB hub and a bunch of cables sticking out the bottom. What we ended up getting from this talk, or from this experience, was interesting, but the proposed goal was this box that basically, this little blue box. I like to call it the blue TARDIS because there's more on the inside than you expect. And the little red warning here, a little blue warning that says basically this logo of the free cell phone charging kiosk. And the red warning here, which I'll show you shortly, but it basically says it would detect when you plugged into it, and when the second you plugged into it, it'd switch over to this red screen saying, you're an idiot. Why would you do this? But during the build, it was interesting because we knew it was going to get deployed at DEF CON, of all places. And who here is not familiar with DEF CON? Let's put it that way. Good. So for this individual right here, Vis has not ever been to DEF CON or heard of it.
I don't know how to compute.
Don't know how to compute. So yeah, DEF CON is this massively large hacker conference in Vegas. We were sticking a computer in the middle of this conference that was intending to be pseudo-malicious. Like all it did was change the display on the screen. But it was an interesting concept because we had to actually secure that machine from being attacked, because that would be the last thing we would want. I mentioned already the live CD change-up, but does anybody here have any idea about what the necessary first real-world problem for having a computer with a bunch of USB ports sticking out of it is? Anybody have an idea? No. Shut up, Tacitus. So it was kind of obvious once you actually thought about it, is that somebody will plug in a USB keyboard and then just start typing. And they can do whatever they want. The screen was on the actual device, so they could just basically hijack the machine and start typing everything, which was easily basically fixed. But I'll go into that a little bit later. That was the main concern, is that the kiosk is going to be a target. And during the build, we actually didn't think it's going to be at DEF CON. These are a bunch of paranoid little bastards. Like, nobody's going to plug in. Nobody's going to trust this. We're going to stick it in a room that's called the Wall of Sheep room, which has a giant poster board of everybody's password getting compromised as they're logging into sys services over an insecure connection. And what we found out was hundreds of people still plugged in over the course of the 3 days at DEF CON. And this was stupid. We were just completely amazed. Here's verification. There's a guy, he's one of the first guys that plugged in happily and is sitting there with the kiosk, even with the red notice saying, don't plug into this, that was a dumb idea. All throughout the conference, and in the back you can see the little piece of it is at the Wall of Sheep wall. So during DEF CON, there was a real, legitimate cell phone charging kiosk that for $5 it would charge your phone for 15 minutes. And I kind of positioned myself near that, and I kept talking to people who would plug in, get their credit cards out to give to this random box that's standing in the hallway, and I'm like, there's a free one over there. And the guy would respond with, where's it at? And I'm like, it's in the Wall of Sheep room. Do you know what that one is? Oh no, what's that? Well, it's the room where everybody gets hacked. So just go in there. And the guy happily runs off, and I go over there, and like 10 minutes later, and I find the guy sitting down with his phone plugged in to this little blue TARDIS, and I'm like, what was that? Amazingly, it always works. It always works to some degree. And you can see this is the original screen, which is the same as what's on this board here. That's what people would see before they walked up to it. And using USB utilities, I could detect when somebody's plugged in a new USB device. And when it detected a new USB device got plugged into the system, it showed this screen, which is, as you can read, is you should not trust public kiosks with your smartphone. Information can be retrieved or downloaded without your consent. Luckily for you, the station has taken the ethical route and your data is safe. Enjoy the free charge. So even though this massive signs still come up, people would still constantly plug in, get presumably compromised, and do whatever they basically, go on, do their thing. So after DEF CON, it was interesting. I mean, media had picked it up by that point in time. It was a very novel concept. Nobody had done something like that before. And so a lot of people posted about it. I believe Brian Krebs and a few other people posted about it. So people knew that it existed. So a few months later, there was TourCon, which is in San Diego. And once again, Riverside and I got together and said we should do it again. And that was it was a plan that we put together, and we actually built a new kiosk, an entirely new kiosk. It did slightly different. It actually took a little bit of malicious action because what it would do is it would basically identify your USB device as you plugged it in, and then record your specific USB ID, which includes like your manufacturer, the make and model of your phone, and it would log how long you were plugged into it. And this isn't really that malicious, but it's something that's novel and neat and different. We didn't want to go the route of uploading stuff to people's home directory or SD cards yet, or pulling data off the SD cards. But the key thing is that at TourCon, it had already been published by multiple articles, by multiple people. The term had been coined, juice jacking. We didn't know what to call it before DEF CON. After DEF CON, one of the reporters said it's juice jacking, and I'm like, all right, cool, that sounds catchy. So even though the idea had already been published, people still plugged in. And it was completely amazing to us that over the one day that I had it out, the kiosk out at TourCon, people were still plugging in. And one of the guys that had the best story where he actually said, my wife had called me during the talk and my battery was dead and there was something really bad going on. And I watched him exit the talk and make a beeline for the charging kiosk and plugged in his phone, and I was just dumbfounded because the guy just seeked it out and just didn't care and plugged in. And I walked over and I talked to the guy a bit, and his reasoning was that his wife was frantically trying to call him and he just needed a charge. So the anxiety level had been risen so high that he had just felt he must charge at that moment, and he didn't care for the repercussions. He didn't think about it. And the individual who I'm talking had actually heard about juice jacking, and he was very much aware of it. And he said about 3 seconds after he plugged in, he remembered everything. And he said, oh shit, he knew he did the wrong thing. And this is even more crazy because this is the kiosk, and I apologize for just having the picture, not the device, but this is the kiosk that was at TourCon. A little bit different looking. It didn't have the screen, but it had this nasty, bad raster, graphic, which you can't see in this picture, but like it's all pixelated. Like I'd blown up this image and it just looked bad. And all I did was stick a sticker on the side of a black box that says free, and there are USB cables. And that's all it took for this one individual to just promptly go over, plug in. Throughout the weekend, there were like 3 or 4 different people that all plugged in. There was one guy that was one of the people at the conference, so he was clear, he knew about the charging station. He knew he should have remembered everything. He just didn't think again, plugged in. There was another person who was a known security researcher who plugged in. And people have various excuses why they plugged in, but, to everybody their own. I don't see why anybody would trust a black wooden box that has a sticker that says free on it. So after TourCon, it's been many months later. I kind of forgotten about really working on it, and ThoughtCon was coming up in Chicago. What had happened in the time between TourCon and ThoughtCon is that I had received a little device that's a TP-Link router. It's about 2 inches, it's a square device, you can see it on the left. It's a 2-inch square device, it's about a 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch tall to 1 inch tall. And it has a little battery backup underneath it. And I found out, like, well, if I can really want to try this hard, I can shrink it down to this size, this little box. And this is much smaller than the EE PC, so I actually don't have to worry about having a somewhat large but small laptop to clunkily hide somewhere. And it worked out pretty well because, again, I just stuck it in a box and I had little cables running out of it. I did not display it at ThoughtCon because this idea hadn't, this was like a week before ThoughtCon had happened that I was like, oh crap, I can use this little miniature router that's running OpenWRT to do some nasty stuff. And I showed it to some people and they liked it because it was so compact and small. Which, you can see here, what's in front of me, is what I put some time into this week, or in the last few weeks, is to build this kiosk of sorts for LayerOne. And it looks nicer. It's a nice graphic. It's not trying to do anything malicious. You don't see that anything bad's happening. But that little mini poner, that little TP-Link router, which was sold as a mini poner, was what's inside, and that's what's powering this device. Let me see. I should ask, has anybody actually plugged into this today to get a charge on their phone? Just me? Why wouldn't you trust me? Why wouldn't you trust this? You can see on the back, there's a little wood compartment that basically inside this is the mini poner. It's located right about here, and there's a USB hub, which is what you saw in the picture. And a lot of people who I've talked to today basically said, like, yeah, this is so small, they don't think that the wood is part of, like, a computer is able to be compacted back there. This isn't as small as it could get, but it is certainly as small as I could get utilizing a router, which I think sells for $25 to $35 online. Yeah, the cardboard's not dangerous. And it's blue, and it's a nice picture, and who's gonna think anything nasty is gonna happen here? But with this device, it's a little bit different. Let me see. I didn't do a demo. I didn't practice this demo, but let me see if I can do this. There are a lot of wireless networks here.
Backhaul to the same place.
Yes.
Get on a TCP that you can watch everybody's iPad.
Really?
All Apple devices talk.
Oh, all Apple's devices talking to each other.
So-and-so's iPhone, so-and-so's iPad Touch, so name it.
Let me see if I can connect here real quick to show you the... Come on. I probably should have connected before I started this talk, but I got a little bit of time, so... And it's always good to try to do a demo so it can fail in the middle of a talk. That's the point of demos, right? It is not picking it up. If you plug in a phone, it'll charge you happily. Not yet. Let me go ahead and log in here. If I can remember my password. Alright, cool. Let's see if I can make that bigger for you guys. Alright, so this is me logged into the actual small TP-Link router here. As you can see, it's running OpenWRT. It's been up for about 18 minutes since I started my talk. And I can use the command lsusb to show the devices that are connected to the USB hub. And if I get a phone, which I have extra, all right, so I'm charging my Chinese iPhone, and LSUSB shows that I have an Apple Incorporated iPhone connected. DMSG will probably tell me that I have a USB device connecting. A new high-speed USB device using this. Let's see. Oh, that's my actual thing. I don't think I'm going to be able to mount this right now, but let's just try. That's not going to work either. Whoa, I'm doing screenshots. I know, it never works. Let me plug in my other phone. Let me actually destroy my Android phone. Alright, I'm charging. I think I'm charging. I'm not. Why am I leaving this around? Oh! Alright, oh, can I have that? It's my actual phone. Ah, thank you, sir.
It's not quite
Yeah. Yeah, I know, the back keeps popping off. It's a piece of crap. It's a Motorola Triumph for the record. They're really cheap, but they're decent. Alright, charging. Not charging. Charging. It's like, you guys can't see this, but Riverside sending me texts while I'm doing a talk. My tethering mode is active. For some god-awful reason, I forgot to turn off tethering so they could connect via my phone. And let's see, toggles. Stupid phone. I have to turn off tethering. Off. And now it asks me, do I want to mount my SD card? I'm going to be stupid and I would have left that option on. Piece of crap. No, that's not what I wanted to do at all. So there you go, I have SDC. And the mini device is not happy about SDC. Oh, well, that didn't work. Oh, I didn't mount my SD card. Whatever, alright, well I've killed enough time with these failing demo. I was going to show my USB monitoring script, which is, again, shell script. Basically, this basically takes one argument phones, or no arguments, it just runs in the background. It counts every, 2 seconds and waits and watches the LSB USB devices. Using LSB USB, it counts how many devices are connected. When a new device is connected, it basically takes the output of LSUSB, prints it out to the saved file, which looks a little bit something like it is in mount data. Oh, it's in data mount USB data phones. It's in this file. So every time a device would connect, you can see my Foxconn Honhai, which is actually this USB or this Motorola Triumph. Take this back. Was plugged in for the clock on it is broken. I apologize. Back in 1970, it was plugged in for about 2 minutes. But I can see other devices. Here it is, the Foxconn Honhai, and the Apple iPhones were connecting and disconnecting. And there you go. That's the end. So there's a few minutes there. So you can see basically this is what I pulled from various phones. This is just me mucking around with it. It looks like nobody else really plugged in for long enough today where it had pulled anything, or it failed to work. Maybe it wasn't running. There's a very good chance that I wasn't running my USB script while it was earlier. But in any case, again, failures for demonstrations. So back to the talk. All right, so that's this device, and nobody seemed to really trust it. I think I saw a few people plugging into it with presumably secured and safe devices. I know I plugged into it just to muck with people and kind of make them think that it was safe. And now the key on this, though, is that really the idea, the subtext of this talk was that it's learning from shenanigans. The idea for this started at a party where we're just out having fun, doing our own thing, and in turn, it turned into this thing where, like, we made this kiosk, something came of it, where, you know, it turned from just having fun to something got created, and then suddenly the media was involved. The second the media was involved, it became this much bigger thing. It actually became a term, you know, that was being searched on Google. People are utilizing it on, you know, their own research blogs or security blogs. Some people that caught onto it, Brian Krebs is the first guy who caught onto it. It was one of his top posts in the last quarter last year. You know, it was beware of juice jacking. He was the one that released this concept via the media route. So he basically did a little write-up about what had happened at DEF CON. After that was TG Daily, which is Tom's guide, how to avoid smartphone juice jacking, and it was a good thing, frankly, because now people were finally learning something that you probably shouldn't plug in your phone to random ass kiosks, or you should do something, think about it before you do it. After that was CNET, the 404, which is a podcasts. Then it was Technolog on MSNBC. Watch out, charging stations could be stealing your data. They like this idea of getting the scare factor in there. After that, though, was again, charging stations maybe juice jacking, quote unquote, utilizing the new term, data from your cell phone. And then, you know, just various Twitter, Facebook, social networking feeds where everybody was collaborating this back and forth, notifying each other, talking about it, thinking up their own malicious ideas, you know, like put it into a marketing campaign, push it off to you know, put it at a public airport, like how could you get it into an airport? So out of all this grew, out of what was just me having fun with friends, it grew into an actual thing. And legitimately, it's I highly recommend, at least if you have an idea with friends, and or even an idea on your own, you're just sitting at home and you want to try it, see it, just go out and do it, because it's not too terribly difficult, and it's in the end you might have something that became much bigger of an idea, or much more publicity about it than you had ever expected, and you'd be up here giving a talk next year at LayerOne. So I like to, at this point in time, like, kind of dissuade from that idea. Right? That was a subtext. I have a question for everybody, and everybody should have heard these answers by now, or at least have their own ideas. Who has an idea about not being able to plug into one of these stations or being public with your cell phone? What would you do to not get juice jacked? Can
you cut open your cable and cut the...
Yes, that is the number one thing that everybody says, and this is why I've identified it here, is always the number one thing. It's called USB cable neutering, is what most people call it. They cut open the cable and they cut out the transfer and receive pins, so it's just the two power and ground pin. And that's as a guy, I just don't like that idea of snipping things. So you can make an adapter as well, but there's a concept in the adapters. It's very common too. People think, oh, I'll just bring an adapter that I can plug into that and that I can plug my phone into. But if you're remembering to bring an adapter, why don't you remember to bring another battery or like, you know, a plug into the wall? Back there.
Bring a shitty phone with the same battery type.
Yeah, another shitty phone with the same battery type, or just bring an extra battery for your phone. If you have an Android phone, you can just take your battery out and swap it in. Any other ideas? You can have a burn phone that you just don't care if they get the data off of, or they put data on it. You could have a smartphone that's not very smart, and you just disable all the functionality. There's another new novel idea, is powering off the device first. Technically, if you do power off the device, it won't run the operating system, so you can't connect to it and do malicious activity. Some phones will actually still allow you to mount the SD card that's located inside the phone, even if it's powered off. It just acts like a USB bridge. Any other ideas from people? Nobody has the obvious one, which is most Android devices will now ship with ROMs that include basically a question. When you plug in an SD card, it says, do you want to mount the SD card or not? This is probably the best idea on a design end, that for the users that aren't thinking about it, by default it should be not mounting the device, and you have to explicitly go in and confirm with the device that you want it to be able to be mountable before anybody can access the SD card. This is it's a software layer block. But it works. It doesn't prevent the potentially malicious kiosks from actually identifying your device was plugged in for a certain period of time. However, it does help with, preventing the, somebody like plugging into somebody else's laptop and their laptop just, and ignoring your phone and then pulling your data off your laptop or via their laptop. This is a good one. Is just bring your own battery backup. They're little battery backups. They cost about $10 to $15, and they're about this size, and they're really cheap and easy. This one's a 3,000 milliamp hour battery backup, and so like these are dirt cheap, and these will plug into any phone. You don't have to change your battery or unplug your phone at all. You just plug in a USB. Basically, you charge the battery. It has a USB port on it, and you plug your phone, what would be your USB, directly to the battery, and it just sucks the data off of it, or basically, ducks. Yeah, and then this can also run the kiosk. I have a small battery. Oof, I can remember where it is. But that could technically run a small battery could run this kiosk, so it didn't even need to be plugged into a wall. It could be floating around somewhere in the world, and you would never know that it's there until too late. Again, that comes back down to remembering to bring something, and bring your own charger, plugging directly into a wall socket versus the kiosk or some sort of public thing. I was flying through Dallas-Fort Worth, and I didn't stop to take this picture, and I'm upset I didn't. But I saw this guy. He was standing right next to a charging kiosk, which is a pay charging kiosk. They're about $5 again for like 15 minutes, which is kind of expensive. But I found it hilarious because I looked behind him. The charging kiosk was plugged directly into the wall. The wall had an open socket right underneath the charging kiosk socket. So the guy was plugged into the socket in the wall underneath the charging kiosk, and I found that just funny because that was perfect. That's exactly right. Like, just remember that it's just power, and don't worry about the data. Just ignore data. All you want is power when you want your phone charged. And the big thing here, though, is that, from my opinion, to not get jacked, there are two valid answers here, and they both circle around remembering something. If you forget to bring your battery, or if you forget to bring your own charger, those are the optimal ones. But those are the ones that are going to be able to save you in the in the best manner. You can also basically verify that your phone requires confirmation before data is being able to be, like the SD card is being able to be mounted. B, for Android devices, before ADB, the Android debugging mode, is turned off. For the record, I'm just kind of curious, who here has a Shennanigan mod installed on their phone? And did you guys turn off debugging? You guys are aware, though, that Shennanigan mod by default has debug mode turned on. So I found this out after I rooted one of my phones, and I plugged it into the kiosk because I was just kind of curious to see if I could detect if it's in debug mode or not. And I thought I'd still have to log into my phone and turn on debug mode, but I found out immediately when I plugged in, when I ran LSUSB, it was kind of funny. The output of USB told me that the phone was a Motorola phone that was in debug mode. So I could immediately then run ADB in order to basically root the phone, install my own apps, or utilize the phone for other malicious purposes. I still don't like the idea of powering off the device because it's not certain. And the USB cable neutering, like I mentioned before, I just don't like the idea of thinking about neutering anything. So, from my end, there's personal and there's business ends of this. If you're in a corporate environment, that's actually a matter of policy. You want to make sure you state that a policy that everybody remembers or everybody's aware of, that you should not be traveling internationally or traveling through airports and forgetting your extra battery backup for your phone. Because frankly, your CEOs and your CTOs and your CFOs and all these chief level guys are basically those are the targets. They're the ones that have the phones that probably has the data, that probably or have access to all the networks or systems that are going to be doing the most damage potentially if the phone is infected and then brought into a secured network, or if the phone's infected and the attacker uses just to read your email, take their photos, take their pictures, and they got blackmail against the CEO of some big company. That'd be nasty bad. But the idea is that it's a matter of policy. You got to make sure you notify people, you let people know to remember not to plug in their phone, because it's more than just a phone. It's more than just potentially more than just a charging kiosk. And for personal users, it's really a matter of not forgetting, or not getting stressed out when your phone runs out of data. don't freak out. Don't think you've got to call your wife back immediately. Just have the idea of remembering it was only 20 years ago or so that cell phones didn't exist. So maybe you can just wait a few hours for you to go back to the hotel room to charge your phone or pick up a landline somewhere to call back.
Could you possibly do this through the 110 volts?
Yes. In fact, I thank you for reminding me because I almost forgot, and Riverside would have been upset if I did. I don't have the information about this in the slides, but I did get a call. Riverside is, for all of you, those of you know him, it's a good guy. He helps run the Wall of Sheep. He helped out a lot with this. He's just currently, unfortunately, not available to be here yet. He's actually rebuilding a juice jacker that is approximately the size of about, I'd say, like about this, and it's all built into a direct wall wart. And he called me with this funny story earlier today, like half an hour or 2 hours ago. He was like, yeah, I wish I could be there. I got this crazy thing. I've been working on the plug, the juice jacking plug. And I'm like, awesome, like, how's it going? He's like, you gotta hear this. I messed up and I rewired the 110 on accident across the USB line. So what he did was accidentally plug his USB into basically 110 volt USB and then plug that into a phone, and the phone promptly died. Like promptly just gone. So theoretically as well, you could fit it into the size of about a wall wart, presumable wall wart, which is the device in here is about that right size. So if I just took the case off, it would fit perfectly fine. And you could also be really malicious and just give people wall warts that just charge 110 into people's phones. Like, here you go. And on that note, I've got some giveaways. I really don't know, who here has the best novel idea for malicious or non-malicious purpose that you could do if you theoretically had a wall wart-sized computer that you could plug into the wall and somebody's plugged into the USB. You've got something. You're going to win a prize. So, on your good idea. You got one in the back, Mr. Mott. Come on, something better. Something better.
There's a company that's already done it. The Pony Plug.
You have the Pony Plug? Yeah, you could integrate the Pony Plug, which runs very similar to the little TP-Link OpenWRT. Yeah, you'd have a full suite, a full-powered computer in order to do malicious activity.
You could throw all the stolen USB data down a power line network to off-site device.
That's unique and different. So yeah, you said you can use a power line network, and you can steal all the data, and then push it to a system off-site. Technically, as well, I could do the same thing here because I have Wi-Fi on my router. So this router could be connecting to a device that's kind of just in the vicinity and just pulling all the dumped data, and I don't even need to ever touch the physical kiosk again. Somebody back there? Sorry, I didn't hear. Cell phone battery to lower your power bill? That was such a weird idea, like the sheet here fell off. I don't know what's happening. All right, does anybody else have any good ideas? Or any crazy ideas? I want novel, new, different?
Maybe you could always just drain your cell phone battery instead of charging it.
That's also a good one, yeah, just completely drain the battery. All right, so, sir in the green shirt, I think I like your ideas. You had two of them. Go up in here. Unless you want to catch it's about 1.5 pounds.
I heard someone over there say drain first.
Oh, somebody else drained? Who said that? Somebody in the back. All right, come on up here. Both of you, because I like your power over, or your Ethernet or power lines. Here you go, catch. These are like 3,000 milliamp hour battery backups, which I hope you guys actually have use for them. Because otherwise, I just gave you like a $10 device for bullshit.
Actually has the microphone built inside it.
Yeah, trust me. Don't worry, I'll be talking to you guys later about all those images. But yeah, so it really to me is remember your charger battery. All right, again. So I mentioned a little bit. So Android devices, the majority of the ROMs ship with ASP before mounting, but you probably should check because I found a lot of manufacturer supplied devices still don't ask right off the bat for the ROMs. So it differs from ROM to ROM. It's got a good benefit for most Android devices that you can take the battery out and swap it out with a different battery anytime you want. You actually have access to it, as opposed to the iPhone device, which is you can never take the battery out of this device without ripping the case apart. So I'm gonna throw that over there again. Sorry, just a little bit on iPhones, but reality is the Androids have unique risks that are completely different than the iPhone, and one of the main ones is the Android debug mode, which allows you to basically get into the phone's like debugger and do anything you want. You can log in directly to the phone, install new apps, fuck around with things, muck around with things, root the phone as well, root it, reinstall the operating system all via the Android debugger. I think PS Neuter is a unique. It was basically a tool that rooted Android phones using an exploit in, I forgot what service it was that was running on the phone, but it basically could root a phone in about 30 seconds. So you're going to presume that anybody's going to charge their phone is going to have it plugged in for more than 30 seconds, and you could basically root anybody's phone who has plugged into your quote-unquote charging station. The iPhone is another main concern. These are the two main contenders, the iPhone and Android. It's designed for usability first is the main thing, which unfortunately means things like you can't take your battery out because they don't think that they want the person who owns the iPhone from swapping batteries, doing all this stuff, having third-party systems. iPhone also has a unique situation where it does an auto sync, where it will, if you plug in your iPhone into your Mac, most of you will know that it'll connect to your iTunes and probably check for updates, do various other things, and basically validate itself. It doesn't do confirmation for mount. It doesn't have an Android debugger, but it basically will immediately allow you to mount the file system. There have been changes in it. In fact, in the last year or so, Apple changed their method for mounting, and it actually requires you to have a I think it's public key or shared key, basically between your iTunes installation and your phone, so your phone knows what your computer is, which is a great benefit. It's huge. It's much better than what it was previously, which is that version of the iPhone. The original generation iPhone didn't care. If you plugged in, it would allow any machine to mount its SD card and pull the data off the phone, push data onto the phone, do other malicious activity. Like I said, it's been fixed. It's good. However, it's still reliant on a key. So if you can brute force that key on an iPhone, you then have access to that iPhone. There's also strict aftermarket control, and there's which is basically controls so you can't do your own power. Basically the USB power adapter to it is this weird control dongle. So if you buy or get one of these like backup battery sources, you have to make sure that you don't get one that's going to be mini USB, because that won't be able to plug into your iPhone. It's just silly, stupid things that seem to be circling around Apple's decisions to make the iPhone a perfect device in their own method. So, any questions so far? Everybody pretty good? All right, good. I'm going to go into some advanced topics here. There's a little bit more to this than just a kiosk. However, that's what the focus of this talk is, focusing around kiosk. You can plug into phones and pull data off phones, and you're thinking this is all going to be, related to that. Push and pull data. That's neat and novel. You can also remember though that you can do foot traffic monitoring. This is what I mentioned before, where you plug in a phone, you get a special USB ID from that phone. That's unique to your phone. So if you plugged into this kiosk here and then went somewhere else, and I had like a mesh network where I could watch where you're going as you plug into different devices. Not to mention that each device could do Bluetooth tracking, but that's a separate thing. This is relying on plugging in. The topic here is plugging into the phone. So this, not only foot traffic monitoring, watching where people go, this would work for multiple airports. So you could see if somebody's traveling through the States, if they always plug their phone into a kiosk. It's effectively the same as people tracking, because your phone is your phone. Rarely do people share phones with each other or swap their phones. So knowing somebody's phone USB ID is the same as knowing where they are. A different concept, and this is unique from the position that I had where I was building the kiosk and putting it out at DEF CON. I was concerned that somebody might compromise the computer that I had there. And this bring up the idea of, well, I could probably also attack the existing kiosks people have at airports and other locations. I researched a lot of these cell phone kiosk companies, and they're really novel what they do. Some of them have complicated video screens that display a commercial when you've plugged in your phone. And in doing that, I knew at the least that there's a computer there, right? It's got a computer because it has to basically play this video, detect when things have been plugged in. They have also a pin system where you stick your phone in a box and it closes, and then it displays you choose your pin. And then choose it from there, though, is that you understand again that there's something in that box that's more than just power, right? I'm able to compact it down to this very small size. I'm certain they're able to compact. They've got a large kiosk. They've got whatever power they need in order to complete their task for what they think is marketing. But you could also attack the kiosk and get after the machine that exists inside it. And then you don't even need to make your own kiosk. Theoretically, if it was a malicious activity, you wouldn't need to make your own kiosk because you just compromise the existing kiosk, and they wouldn't know because what is their patch update system, right? What are their patches? Like that doesn't exist. They never thought that. They potentially never would think that somebody would try to attack a kiosk because what would you get? You'd only be able to get people plugging in their devices. You can also, and again, the primary point of attack there would be the USB interface that exists on the thing, because you'd be able to get USB human interface device like a keyboard or other activity and push directly onto the computer that may or may not exist behind their kiosk. You could also, depending on how they wired it up, you could use your phone as a USB host device, plug it into a kiosk, and if the wiring was not correctly done, you could act as the basically USB host, and your phone is the attack vector, or the attacking device. So when somebody else plugs in their phone to the same kiosk, it would traverse over the USB interfaces, and theoretically you'd be able to mount their phone from your phone and then do malicious activity. And they wouldn't know because it's just you sitting there with a phone at a kiosk, which makes very much sense because you're at a phone kiosk. All these require detailed knowledge of the kiosk. The kiosks aren't verified to be anybody anywhere. I don't think that there's a lot of security behind those kiosk companies. I've not heard a single one kind of reach out to me or talk about juice jacking. In fact, on the kiosk forums, when I saw after this was released, they kind of mentioned it, and every person from a company that designed a kiosk just started railing on the idea of like, nobody would do this. Like, we are running a good business, and it's like, no, the problem isn't that. The problem is somebody malicious could do it. Like, nobody's thinking that you're doing bad. But nobody was thinking, well, how do we really assess this? How do we make potentially our kiosk never be identified as malicious? And what that would be is like, doing a certification saying this is certified clear. And there's no discussion about that in their kiosk forums because it's not worth their money, potentially. And then beyond the kiosk is a simple idea. Just forget everything about the kiosk. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. It's just transfer the attack to a laptop or a PC. If anybody is on a corporate network, or let's think, I like the college network idea. A college network will have a computer lab. Let's say one of those computers has a malware installed, and you're just waiting for somebody who needs charge to go to the computer lab and plug their phone in nonchalantly, not thinking about it because, well, they're just charging their phone. And then malware could be distributed from that computer lab computer or a corporate environment computer, any infected computer, into the phone. Theoretically, you could push malware back and forth between phones and computers, and it would just spread on its own naturally as people physically are the transfer method for your malicious content between phones and computers. It would spread faster than herpes at a college. And then remember, too, that everybody brings their phone to work. So the phone is actually a very powerful device, and nobody thinks that they're bringing their phone from the wild, from potentially malicious networks, into what should be a secured network. And this comes down to, the CISO. And again, it comes down to like policies. You have to have a policy where people don't plug their phones into, their computer at work, or if your phone is, you have to vet that the phone is secure before it's trusted to be plugged into work. And that's crazy. It's big talk to a lot of people, but reality is that there's potential there. Not to mention the fact that all phones have Wi-Fi devices onto them now. So if you have a Wi-Fi network at your work or in your work environment, again, the phone could connect from, a compromised phone could connect to your work's Wi-Fi network, and then now it's within a secured network. So it kind of changes the idea of like what's a secure in your work environment, and it's pretty much everything, including your offices. They should be now considered malicious. And I've already mentioned the mini pwner. So to summarize, the core threat isn't the kiosk. It's the design that chose usability over security. And this is like a very big theoretical idea. It's when you choose usability over security, you're going to make compromises, and perhaps you won't think about the compromises and potential ramifications in the future. And this was data transfer happens on the same port that you charge your phone on. And that's a simple, boiled down to the simplest point. Now everybody who is a phone designer, is having to put in patches and systems that prevent people from basically putting data over that port when the intention is to charge only. So they basically had to reassess the entire design. And the complexity goes beyond the kiosk. It isn't about that. You could infect PCs, laptops. You can infect phones from infected PCs, laptops. Repeat, rinse, go forth. And it isn't just about the phone malware, because that's it's a nice, cool topic to think about that somebody could infect your phone. But the reality is the USB ID on your phone is your specific identifier. If you have enough, let's say, infected hosts, even in corporate networks, you can track USB IDs on the devices and know when. I was not going to swear during this talk, and I just flipped somebody off. But you can know when somebody's plugged into the corporate environment, and you can identify where that person is at that exact point in time. So if you want to track somebody, let's say you've got a compromised system in their office network, you can see where they are when they're in the office, when they're not in the office. And then again, it goes into the obvious, stolen personal information, steal somebody's gallery folder from their phone, and you guys can think about it yourself, but if somebody had your gallery folder, you can think about how much blackmail they may or may not have against you. So that would be it. Thank you, everybody, with Wall of Sheep. LayerOne for having me. Iggy is the designer who put together all these things on short notices for this nice little picture. Riverside, I've mentioned lots. CDocs. LayerOne for having me. Irvine Underground. And again, that's my contact information and my Twitter. So I've got 5 minutes. Any questions, really?
Are you
No, I
releasing
don't
any
want to.
scripts or hardware or documentation or anything like that for those of us that are interested in deploying something like what you're doing, but for the purposes of red teaming and penetration testing?
Yeah, you can always contact me, and I'll be sure. I mean, I don't have any docs. Actually, the Wall of Sheep does have a good write-up. It's not published yet. We're just kind of ironing it out. I'm going to demand that Riverside, when I see him today, that he publish it. But go to, I believe it's wallofsheep.org. Yeah, you have to chase down the guy on the Rascal is Riverside. He's not here yet, but you'll know him when you see him. There's a whole write-up there that explains, it includes a list of tested phones. So I'm always interested if you've got a weird, unique phone, you want to come up, hit me up. We'll see what we can do when you plug it into my laptop. We'll see if I can. I mean, I promise I'll be nice, but I'll see. Basically, they'll do a quick little pen test on your phone to see what cannot be accessed. Any other questions, concerns? Yes, sir.
If you're in charge only mode, can you override that from the
Let's find out. So this question is, if you're in charge only mode and ADB is enabled, and so the debug mode is on, can I override what?
charge only, not the SD card?
Ah, yeah, that'd be a good idea. Possibly. I haven't looked into specifically doing that, but let's go into it. I actually meant to install ADB on this. This does not have ADB installed on it, but like I said, I can work on that today. And I'm going to put this back outside so people can actually charge their phones. I promise it's not doing anything besides tracking. If you go to the 23B shop after this, I'm actually going to be installing another charging kiosk there that does something malicious but funny at the same time. It doesn't steal your data, but it just gives you something a little special. So, all right, cool. Thank you all. Any final questions now? All right, you guys can hit me up. I'll be around. So. Oh, thanks for my phone again. I love throwing that thing around. Yeah. It's great.